So now I think, wait. Brahmanandam Paramasughanam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dandvatitam Gaganasadarsham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarehitam Sadgurum Tam Namah. So I think we have a rough, a general idea of now of the map of the journey. Roughly we know what we are looking for, kind of. And yeah, so now the question is, if it is so, and if this has to be found, is it possible for us to find this using our 5 senses? No. Because the reach of the 5 sense organs, which are the only instruments of perception that we have, is limited. You cannot find something infinite. Like with the eyes, one of the instruments of perception are the eyes. You can see up to a certain distance. Beyond that you can't. You need a telescope. Your nose, you can smell up to a certain distance, but beyond that you can't. So they are quite limited, the 5 senses we have, which is of course hearing, seeing, smelling, taste and touch. These are the 5. They call, in yogic parlance, they are called the Pancha Jnanendriyas, the 5 instruments of perception. Now these have their limits. In this world you can see most things with them, but if you're going to touch little more than that, then you need to develop some other organs of perception, other instruments of perception. And the yogis believe that there are other instruments of perception in the human system which are usually not active, but which can be activated and made to function. So the whole process of sadhana, whichever sadhana you're doing, is to be able to activate these additional organs of perception. Additional because we don't know about them right now, because we depend only on the 5 senses. Apart from that, the 5 senses can be quite inaccurate sometimes in their data, and sometimes even illusory. Sometimes, the optical illusions. There are many optical illusions. You may see with your eyes, but you can't believe it fully. If seeing is believing, then it's wrong. Because sometimes there are certain things which you don't see, like the wind. But you believe it exists. Why? Through its reactions. Leaves move and so on, but you don't actually see it. So, now, every morning we see the sunrise, right? Every morning. Now, in places where the sun really is visible, every morning we see the sunrise, and every evening we see the sunset. But you ask a small high school boy or a girl, they will tell you that Dad, this is wrong. The sun neither rises nor sets. It's the earth that moves. By now everybody knows this, most people. At least we think we know. But what do the eyes show? That the sun is rising and the sun is setting. So can we believe what the eyes say? So, all I'm saying, of course you need these instruments of perception. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is they're inaccurate, and many times, and at best inaccurate, and at the worst, maybe even an illusion, like the sun rising and setting. So can we depend on that data to look for something that is infinite? Even finite things, if you can't find properly, how do you find? Now, we have this wonderful teaching that there are other instruments of perception in the human being which generally are latent, not active, but which can be activated. Well, to put it in terminology, there are many parts of the brain which have not been explored. All the parts that have been explored are enough for our existence and for writing music and for philosophy and physics, higher and so on. But there are still many. Actually, you ask a neuroscientist, he will tell you we use 20% of our brain. What happens to the rest? Is it just idle? Is there any function? Or the yogis say, yes, there is a function. There are other parts which need to be activated so that you can go from gross objects to subtle objects and subtler until you reach that which is the witness of all forms of existence. And is not to be looked for outside, it can be looked for inside, just as the instruments of perception are in us. We have to awaken them. So the practice of yoga, the practice of sadhana, the practice of spiritual techniques, including Kriya, is mainly to activate these organs of perception so that we can go deeper into the world and not believe only that what you see. On this point, please, I'm going to do something practical, don't worry. I'm not only on theory. Since we are on this subject, we always feel that many of us think that we have a, what is it called, a rational framework which we have built for ourselves to survive. Yeah, you need it. But when it comes to things which can't be understood by these five senses and the mind, because the normal mind, the ordinary mind, bases its beliefs and experiences on the five senses. So it's like a computer. So the data that comes in, the inputs that you get are from the five senses. So they have to be imperfect, they cannot be perfect. And the mind processes these inputs and comes to a solution, which we call our rational framework. So that also has to be defective, it can't be fully clear, because the inputs are limited. Inputs. So we are saying there are other instruments of perception in the human system which, when awakened or opened or made functional, then you move into those areas which cannot be understood by the ordinary mind. Can be understood by the mind which is open to data or open to inputs from the other extrasensory instruments of perception. Right, so this is that's one side of the story, how to activate them. Yoga, of course, is a perfect way if you know why we are doing it and what it is all about. The second, we keep that aside and look at the other side. We also understand, we meaning crazy people like us, we also understand, it's a question of who is crazy actually. We also understand that the body has many kinds of energies moving inside. There is some energy like anger, we know it. When it comes, you don't know what you're doing, but it's so powerful. It's the same with affection, love, hatred. They're very powerful emotions. Why? Because there are powerful energies in the system. Now, from the point of view of yogic anatomy and physiology, I'm saying yogic anatomy and physiology because very often some of the things we discuss here may not be found, you can't find it in the dissection room, in a body. You may open up the body and look for chakras, there are nothing there. So, we're talking about something else. not just physical. Of course, physically there are centers which correspond to the chakras, but they are not the chakras. They correspond. Otherwise, how do we touch them? If they are in the thin air, you can't catch them. But they correspond to the centers in our system. So, according to yoga, yogic anatomy and physiology, I'm not talking about one particular school of yoga, please understand. Because the definition of yoga is simply yogas chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the stilling of the distractions of the mind stuff. This is yoga. So I'm talking in a general way, not this yoga, that yoga. So the prana, which is the energy which keeps us alive, which also helps in digestion, which helps the system, there is an energy, otherwise it won't work, right? Now, this energy, which we call prana, according to yogic anatomy, functions through 1,000 nadis or channels, of which 3 are very important. There are 1,000 channels or more. When I say 1,000, it's not accurate, many, endless, countless. However, 3 channels are most important. One is called the Ida, which is on the left, and the other is called the Pingala, which is on the right. You don't have to remember the words. And there is one channel called the Sushumna, which is in the middle. Now, for most functions in this world, like eating, drinking, singing, music, art, science, abstract, for all these, it's enough that the prana functions either through the Ida or through the Pingala, or to the left channel or the right channel. More than enough, sufficient. However, if you need to go deeper and go into the inner understanding of your true essence, which is a spark of the all-pervading reality, then you need to open the channel, which is generally not functional, which is called the Sushumna, as I said, and which is in the center. It's almost equal or corresponds to the cerebrospinal system. Cerebrospinal system. And the Ida and Pingala can be equated with the parasympathetic ganglionic chain on either side. Not exactly that, but corresponding to. And the chakras can be called the plexuses which we have from the, there's some nerve endings come and join together. You know the solar plexus, everybody knows, I think. If you are in a desperate state and you don't know how to escape, fix your knee on the solar plexus. Especially for women. I mean, here you don't have to worry. You're safe. You know, the solar plexus. In the same way, there are many plexuses, starting from the bottom till the top. So, now I'm going to make a rough drawing of the nadis so that it will be easy for us to understand how. All these wires hanging. Can you see there? From here? Okay. Supposed to be head. Maybe I should be drawing and painting and making my living. Yeah. Roughly, not exactly. So, this on the left side is the Ida channel, on the right side is the Pingala channel, and both of them start from this part, bottom of the spine, and one goes this way, one goes this way, and here they cross each other, and this one goes to that side and this one goes to the other. So left brain and right brain. In the modern language of neurology, there's a left brain, this goes there and this goes here. So it crosses. And this place where it crosses is an important center for yoga. In fact, traditionally, for the yogi, this is called Varanasi, Banaras, because the river Varuna and the river Asi come together here, cross each other, and then go up to Sahasrara, the 1,000-petal lotus, where sits Shiva and completes, which means the supreme reality. You can call it Shivam, whatever you want to call it. So this is the thing. Now, these are the two nadis. I'm saying this because you need it when you do the Kriya. You need to have an understanding. No? And the central line, the central channel, is the Sushumna, which goes down from the last center, Muladhara, straight up to the Sahasrara. Okay. What you need to do in yoga is to get the Ida and Pingala energies to the Muladhara, with the bottom most center represented by the square here, and then spark them. Like you can imagine that one is the anode and the other is the cathode. I'm deliberately not saying plus and minus or positive, negative, male and female, then it appears different. Like in electricity, you have the anode and cathode, both are important. What happens when you rub the anode and cathode? A spark. So, the yogi brings all his energies from both sides down here and sparks them, and that spark then travels through the Sushumna straight up to the Sahasrara, Meanwhile, as it travels, it touches different centers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. In the Indian music system, sa re ga ma ba da ni sa, here is sa ni da ba ma ga ri sa, down. So 1, 2, 3. So these are the 7 centers, and the energies which are brought are sparked and made to go up slowly. Now let me explain to you why they have these symbols. The last, which is at the base of the spine, is called the Mooladhara. Mooladhara means root, R-O-O-T, root, dhara, foundation, adhara. So it's Mool Adhara, means root foundation. That's where the energy in all of us having done its work, resides at the bottom of the spine. Like a snake which has fallen asleep. There's no snake there. It's a symbol, don't keep looking. It's a symbol. It's fallen asleep. And with the effort, the yogi slowly awakens it. And then it hisses and goes up. This is the process. Now why are these symbols there? The square is the symbol of the last center, the Mooladhara. Some people say it is the first. You can also say, if you look from the top, then it is the last. Now the square, actually it's a symbol of a cube, which means solid, which is the earth, the Prakriti, matter, physical matter in its solid form, which is the most perfect solid form, is a square, all the angles equal. So it's represented by a square. Prithvi means the earth. It doesn't mean just this earth, it means everything that is solid, concrete, so-called. Actually there is nothing concrete, but solid. So this is the square. Then, so right now our consciousness, awareness, is at the level of the three-dimensional world, which is the square, this world, most of us. From there, one has to take one's awareness or consciousness, I won't say consciousness, awareness, to a subtler level, the next level, which is represented by the crescent, like a crescent moon. Why is that so? And okay, so this is the earth, Prithvi, solid matter. And this is the apas, which is the water, the liquid tattva. They call tattvas, Prithvi and so on. The liquid tattva, because from solid, what is the next subtle state? Liquid. Melt the ice and it's water. So it flows. So that which flows, which is also a symbol of the mind, which is never standing still. Solids can, but water cannot. It moves. It's also symbolized by the moon, because that tattva, which is called apas, the watery tattva, is also identified with the moon. Cool light of the moon. See, we always think imagination is connected to the moon, right? Luna, goddess Luna. So, liquid. Also, if you keep a liquid in a vessel, it's not in a straight line. It's always like this. There is a lower meniscus and there is an upper meniscus. It's not straight. Look carefully. You can see it best if it's a small test tube. So this is the water principle. So from the solid, awareness has to shift to the liquid, which is the next subtle area. From there, come to the Manipura chakra in the center of the navel, which is represented by a triangle going up with its apex up and the base down below. It represents the element of fire. Now when you say fire, it doesn't mean just the fire that you light. It also means anything that burns, absorbs, purifies, and so on. So, in the Indian system of thought, that the energy which digests your food is called the digestive fire, because it burns up. Actually, fire means combustion. It burns up, right? There is also the fire of desire. Somebody says, oh, it's so much fired with enthusiasm. Nobody says it's watered with enthusiasm. Fired. So fire is a symbol of the spirit, of going up, of energy. You light one fire and you can light any number of fires from it. It doesn't diminish. It doesn't diminish. And it can burn up the whole world. One spark is enough. You know the Californian fires which are on in summer? Somebody puts a spark, the whole thing has caught fire. So fire is a symbol of actually the spirit and aspiration and energy. So from the awareness, from solid to the next subtle state, then you come to that all-consuming energy of desire. Except that here the desire is for that, which is beyond. Desire, you know, even if you light a fire and hold the candle down, the flame will always burn upwards. It's a beautiful symbol of aspiration and desire. You all know that desire is represented, symbolized as fire. Suppose I have somebody who was my favorite girlfriend in my youth, suppose. I don't think there was any. People usually refer, oh, she's your old flame. Nobody says old water. Because it's connected to desire. Fire. So, water is used to douse it actually. So that's the next step where the consciousness, our awareness goes to the all-consuming fire that burns off all the dross and the so-called three-dimensional ideas we have and takes us upwards. And the next is here in the center of the chest, which has two triangles there, one up and one down. You know the Israeli flag. It's a Star of David. Here it represents, now the triangle which is up is the spirit, or that which is not matter. Let's put it this way. And the triangle down is matter, this world, material. So when both of them are integrated, we have a human being. This and that come together, we have a human form. I don't know if you have seen, nowadays people are not so interested in the Christian terms in the West. I don't know why. In Germany I saw some old cathedral was being used as a mall, as a shop. I don't know, but anyway. So, good or bad, we don't know. You must have seen this famous picture or image of Jesus on the cross, right? And on the top Apparently the Romans wrote ridiculing him INRI, because in Latin I and J are interchangeable. So it's JNRJ, which means Jesus Nazareth Rex Judarum, Jesus King of the Jews. He is hanging here. That's what they say. But from our point of view, and also from the Gnostic point of view, Gnostic GNOSI, it's not, you don't have to change the I to J, it is INRI. You don't have to say JNRJ, it's INRI. So what does it mean? That is exactly this symbol. If you had understood that, there is no clash. It means, in Latin, Igne is fire. What is fire in Sanskrit? Agni. Igne, N, natura, earth, nature. Igne, natura, fire and earth, renovat. The nature renovated through fire, through integration, integra. So it's igne, natura, renovat, integra. The earth renovated by the spirit. This is the symbol that we have here, two triangles, earth and the spirit together. And it's in the middle here, in the middle of the chest, and it is represented by the tattva of air, vayu, wind. So what happens? You have a solid piece of ice, Prithvi, I'm just giving you a symbol. You heat it. It's water. Keep heating it further. Becomes vapor. So now the awareness has reached to the stage of vapor. Much subtler than the solid. Solid needs a particular space to rest, but vapor can move. Right? Okay, so the yogi goes step by step, taking his mind from the lowest level, from solid to flow, to vapor which is in the air, and then you come to this center, Shuddhi. It represents Akasha. Now this Akasha is a term which has variously been translated into space and so on. It's not space. Well, it is space in a way. Akasha means the primeval, original, undefined and undifferentiated matter from which this whole world has come. And therefore, in the end, when it is finished, it will go back to Akasha. Akasha is also symbolized as the sky because it is all pervading. So the mind is slowly lifted from the solid to Akasha, the sky, which is even beyond, more subtler than even air, from which everything comes and into which everything goes back, undifferentiated. It's when differentiation takes place in Akasha that different elements are created. This is the theory of Sankhya. Sankhya is an ancient philosophy. Now, so Akasha. Then the awareness is lifted up further to the center, just behind the middle of the forehead, which is called the Ajna, which is represented by a white, pure milk white lotus with two petals. Meaning, from there, from Akasha onwards, which is here, it is difficult to define what it is. But it is pure, so therefore it is white. White is a color of purity. And then from there the mind is made to ascend to the Sahasrara, or the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is also celebrated as the union of Shiva and Shakti. the male-female principles come together. If you look carefully at the word Jehovah, it's formed of the male and female. Jah for the male and Hawa for the female. So, this movement of the energy from the solid to subtler and subtler levels until it reaches the Sahasrara Chakra, what happens? The yogi's mind continues to become more peaceful, more tranquil, but full of energy. Sometimes we associate disturbance with energy. The energy is low because it's been distracted and wasted. When there is no distraction and is not exhausted or wasted, then it is full, purna, full. And so the mind of the yogi, as it goes up from center to center, becomes tranquil, quiet, peaceful, blissful, and powerful. Not powerful to do anything, but in itself intrinsically powerful. So when it reaches the Sahasrara, then the yogi is supposed to become a multi-dimensional human being whose feet may be on earth, but his mind is beyond. This is the whole process of the practice of yoga. And the first step required is calmness of mind, quietness. All distractions have to cease. That's not the end. That's the first step required, because that's the tarmac from where your plane can, your aircraft can take off for the higher levels. But this is essential. So all practices first take you there. I mean, all yogic practices. Now, when I say all yogic practices, I am not talking only of Ashtanga Yoga. There is, of course, Kriya is part of Ashtanga Yoga. But, which we'll discuss in the evening session, how to do and so on. I'm also talking about all the different sadhanas that are there to take you to that realm, including the Shakti sadhanas which are there, Sri Vidya Upasana, in a different way, help you to move forward to that. It starts from concrete and goes on to the subtler and subtler levels. People from India will know that there is the Sri Yantra. In the middle of the Sri Yantra there is a bindu, a dot. This is the external worship of the supreme energy in the form of a dot, and the rest of the pictures are all different layers of consciousness of this world, subtler and subtler, till you come to the bindu. It is from the bindu, that little dot, that this whole universe has come, and into that little dot it will go back in the end. Yeah. There's an interesting story, of course, but in some of these practices you use sound, in some you use postures, in some you combine the two, and so on. There are many. This bindu from which everything comes and everything goes back is a very interesting concept, because I want to tell you a story from the Upanishad. There is this well-known principal Upanishad called the Chandogya. The Chandogya Upanishad, one of the sons of a great rishi, a great sage, goes to another sage to understand the truth. Because the father thought he would be too prejudiced to teach his son, so he sends him somewhere else. And the boy comes back, and the father asks him, "So, have you found the truth?" The boy says, "I think I have." So the father says, "If you think you are, then you haven't. Because when it is found, There's nothing to think about. She is done. So you're still somewhere. I said, okay, so I'm going to work with you now. You have attained what is to be attained. Now we have to go further up. So have you all seen a banyan tree? With the roots coming down, huge. So there's a banyan tree close by. So his father says, go look there, you'll find a seed of a banyan tree there on the ground, pick it up. So this is how the Upanishads were taught. People are not told, oh, this is what we believe, you believe. So look and find out for yourself. So he picks up a seed of the banyan tree and comes, and his father says to him, peel it. So he peels it, takes off the peel. He says, what do you see? Well, I see the kernel inside. K-E-R-N-A-L, kernel inside. Okay? So this again, he peels the kernel. What do you see? I see small little black seeds inside. He says, take one of those seeds and peel it. So he takes one of these seeds and peels it. What do you see? He says, I see nothing. He says, it is from this nothing that this whole banyan tree has come. That in Tantra is called the Bindu, the center from which all energy comes. And everything is manifested and in the end goes back. The good news is the Bindu is in every one of us. That's the good news. So in the afternoon session, those who have already taken Kriya from me can come again, there's no problem. Those who haven't and who want to can take. And those who don't want to need not take. You can still attend the sessions, not the Kriya session if you don't want. And those who are already practicing something from some other teach they've learned, I don't want them to come because then it'll all get mixed up. We don't want any khichdi. Let's go clear on this. They may be doing what they have to do, that's okay, doesn't matter. Because this is, the spiritual practice is not window shopping. You're going to look around and say, this is good, this is good. No. Need to, tune into something and carry on with that. No. Unless I specifically feel that somebody is doing something, but he can also. This is very individual. I can't. It's not general. So there we go. Now, we have half an hour. If you have any questions, not general questions, which will be dealt with tomorrow, any questions relating to the topic we have discussed just now?
I have heard that doing this practice of elevating the energy from the bottom. So this process of elevating this energy from the bottom to the top can lead to
madness,
damage to madness kind of symptoms and all that. So it's easy to hear this that it's easy to go, but I think it's a very difficult and a very dangerous task, right? So anything about that?
Okay. Yes, true. First, let me admit that in some cases this might be true. That is because of a couple of elements. One is not proper guidance, over enthusiasm, The teacher says, practice every day for half an hour, and this guy thinks, no, I must go fast, 2 hours a day. One. Second is not proper guidance, maybe a wrong technique. 3, maybe, most probably, the person is not following or trying to follow the ground rules which are required, the yamas and niyamas, before starting on the practice. 3. 4. If a person is already a mentally slightly unbalanced person, then it is not easy for them to do this. Then it may aggravate. That's about it. So, therefore, when we teach the simplest techniques possible, so that one doesn't rush into this. And practice, because we are dealing with energies, tremendous energies. You're right. So one has to be a bit careful. But I've seen so many people who have not gone mad. Here and there might be, but it is very rare. Right. Sure short way to go crazy if you are practicing Kundalini Yoga is to practice after drinking alcohol. Alcohol. I always tell people, if you had a drink, a glass of wine, and you don't practice Kriya that day, do it the next day. Because alcohol, why do we feel so good with alcohol? Because it paralyzes the central nervous system for a time being. Therefore, you don't have inhibitions for some time. So you feel expanded. You're in the Brahman. That's why people drink. But it clashes with this, because here we are trying to open the channels, and there the protective covering for the channels is broken. So there are some little bit of rules to be checked before you do it. I'm sure many of you may not be using it. Do you? No. Alcohol? Yeah. Come in.
Sir, you discussed in the morning.
In the monastery?
In the morning you discussed about the witness, and now we discuss about consciousness. Same or consciousness is a part of it.
Wait. When I said, that's why sometimes you might have heard me correcting myself. When I said, first I said the consciousness should ascend. Then I corrected myself and said awareness. You can't be aware if you don't have consciousness. You have to be conscious, right, to be aware. So here what I mean is awareness. That awareness has to go up step by step. When I said consciousness in that context, it means the absolute, all-pervading, supreme reality, which has nothing to do with our awareness or anything, in a little way, but in a bigger way.
So witness is awareness?
Total witness, not witness, I am Ramnath and I am watching not that witness. In that ultimate witness, you figure out that there is only one anyway, nothing to be watched. The watcher and the watched disappear as identities. That is the supreme God.
Sorry. Just now you said about that we should not practice after having alcohol. But say
you want to?
No. When we come back from office tired, so can we have a cup of coffee and then?
Absolutely. Coffee is allowed. Tea is allowed. Even alcohol is allowed. Don't practice after having your drink. And one drink is okay. Don't have 5. You know what I mean. But all this is allowed. Cannabis is allowed. No, sorry. Okay. Yourself. Yes.
A question related to the rising of Kundalini in the Sushumna. Can you expand a little on how it rises? Does it rise to a level where it's permanently there, or does it go down, up and down, according to the heightened state of consciousness that one might find oneself in, or during, if you're in a good mood or bad mood or whatever?
Let me tell you this. It's very difficult to make a definition of how it goes, because it may differ in different people. I know of cases where people say it's like a frog jumping. How is that? So some parts are not touched, tuck, tuck. There are others who say that it's like an ant slowly going, ant moving. Or some people say it's like some wriggling feeling. Some say it's a rush. So it's difficult to say which is the standard. I think it depends on various factors. But one thing is clear, that it's a blissful experience. Yes. If it is a painful experience, it's not Kundalini, it's something else. It's a blissful experience, and it is so blissful that you don't want to give up. It's like a man who's habituated to his drink in the evening. You know, there are these exclusive clubs all over the world. In India, we have an exclusive club called the Bangalore Club. Bangalore, one of them. So I was invited to give a talk on meditation. So I went and I talked. First they said there is a dress code. In India, okay? In India, not here. They said there is a dress code. You need to wear pants and a jacket and so on. I said, sorry, this is my dress code. I'll wear a kurta and a jacket, it's okay with you. Finally they agreed. Okay. So I went and we had a talk. At the end of the talk, I stopped exactly at 7 o'clock. So I said, no, we stop. So, sir, why now? I said, because now the bell is going to ring and all of you will be searching for the spirit that comes in the bottle. So if I talk after this, you will be totally distracted. You know. So what I mean to say is, this is much more intoxicating than that. And if you taste a little bit of it, you will have no interest in that. For the sake of society, you might have a drink, but so there is no way to define this. But definitely, it's a blissful experience, not painful.
Is the uprising of the Kundalini power some kind of precondition for the recognition of the true self and for finding peace?
Oh, precondition, okay.
Or can it happen also in another way, without the uprising?
Absolutely, it can happen, but the activation will take place, but you may not be aware of it, but it can happen in other ways also. Not that you should do only Kundalini Yoga and you have to take, it's not required. You know, sometimes when you are really in love or you're faced with a fantastic spectacle which you never expected, something happens inside. Or when an artist paints a beautiful picture, fully involved, or when a musician sings and he doesn't even remember where he is. It's actually in some way an activation of the Kundalini. It need not necessarily be that you should go step by step and awaken it. But then that is at random and spontaneous. While this is something for people who like to go step by step, like people who think we can't just let all things happen by themselves. Yeah. But the end result of this and that have to be the same, because you're right. For instance, I know somebody who is so involved in his music. Well, he is a singer as well as a violinist. The violin has been adapted in India to play Indian classical music. It's a Western instrument. It's been adapted, and some people do an excellent job of it. It's beautiful. So when they play this guy, when he plays the violin and he's so fully involved in it, he has several times told me that something beautiful is happening to me. I don't know what it is. I've done no yoga, nothing. But he has led a good life. This much is there. He's led a very good life. He's a kind man. And his food is very limited. He doesn't overeat. And all these good qualities are there in him. But then he hasn't done any practical sadhana as we know of. For him, a complete absorption in music is his practice. This is also possible. I can't deny this. Now, can I add one thing more? That if you are seriously interested in like music or something, along with that, if you start this kind of a practice, not this kind of, some kind of a spiritual practice, where you awaken the centers of energy, you will be able to merge the two and probably do fantastic music. I'm just using music as an example, simply because music has no language barriers. Music has a language when you study it, of course, but in its pure form, it has no barriers of language. Like you listening to Beethoven, I'm listening to Beethoven, I don't know the language, there is no word there, there's only the sound. You're enjoying, I'm enjoying. See, so it cuts across nationalities, across boundaries. You don't need words to describe it. It's there. So therefore I'm using the example of music because it's nearest. In fact, there is a yoga in India which is called Nadi yoga, the yoga of sound, which exclusively deals with this subject. So that's it. So this is food for thought. I'm not giving you an answer. I always stimulate you to think. I don't have a ready-made answer for, because the answer should come from you. If I give a ready-made answer, it's my answer, not yours. But provide stimulation, provide points so that you can food for thought.
Excuse me, sir, you were talking about music.
1 second.
Oh,
They can't hear them.
excuse me, sir, you were talking about music. Nowadays, we're talking about Mozart, Bach, and all these wonderful Beethoven. Well, nowadays we listen to Eminem, Foo Fighters,
What?
9 Inch Nails.
What is that?
I can name a lot. And I'm not sure when you talk in this kind of music.
Let me tell you, I have nothing against rock and roll, unless you don't keep rocking and rolling. But when I talked about music, I was talking more about the classical symphonies, more than the other music. But other music also, you see, has some connection. Like for instance, if you hear drums, suppose there is a rhythm of drums, watch yourself carefully, your mind slowly comes into that rhythm. Then if it is fast, you would want to stand up and jump and dance. So all I'm trying to say is it has a tremendous influence on the human system. But here we are talking about that classical music, which is timeless actually. It's timeless.
Because I notice some young children when they're going out and they're listening to not classical music, they actually get violent or aggressive, which is I don't know.
Maybe some, but there may be some who really are quite nice. Who knows? Huh? What we shouldn't try to do is impose our views on the young. Rather have healthy discussions with them. Don't impose your views, then it's always a reaction. Because let me tell you that the younger generation now, because of evolution, has perhaps more brains than we had at their age. So if you have to talk to them, provide something which they can seriously look at and think. Not say that, no, this is the right thing to do. They say, no, it's the wrong thing to do. We don't want to do it. I have 2 children. They also passed through teenage, so I know how it is. So, no confrontation.
So you talked about the 5 sense organs. Is mind also not a sense organ? Because the external inputs might be the same, but based on the state of mind or the kind of mind. So I always wonder if mind even plays a bigger role than actually the sense perceptions that come in.
True, but the mind depends on its inputs on the senses. The mind does not absorb anything from outside except through the senses. So therefore the senses are very important for the mind. A mind without sensory inputs knows nothing. And we are saying that perhaps there is a mind which can function without the sensory inputs. And that's what we are looking for. Perhaps there is a mind which even without the sense part of the mind, let's say, if you don't want to call it spirit, there's something in us which can probably see, enjoy, feel everything without the interference of the sense organs. Normally it's not possible to think of that. Any idea we have, including what you're saying now, is based on the inputs you have received through your sense organs. You heard, ear. Then the mind processes it, of course. You saw, eyes. See that? While the mind is important, the inputs given by the senses. So it's dependent on the senses. The mind is important, there is no doubt. Because my eyes may be open and I may be seeing you all. I mean, the image may be there in my optical apparatus. But if my mind is in the Himalayas, I am really not seeing you. So just the sense organs are not enough. The mind has to be very much yoked to it. So that way, yes. One more question. Oh, sorry. 1 and 2.
My life has been, active life has been an entrepreneur in the music business. And there we made researches, and there is the experience that there are rhythmic patterns that can change the entire value system for a person. From loving to destructive. And it's still, of course, the resonance in the mind that makes someone easy to respond to this pattern, or to be immune.
Yeah.
So it's both ways.
Both ways. So, is there any question?
No, it's just sharing, sharing in this.
You're right. Especially because you have so many years of experience with this. So, we have one more question. This, yours.
The question is about Kriya Yoga, and I'm involved in Kriya Yoga since maybe 25 years. First with disciple Prademananda, and afterwards with Shubhendurani, and with Sri Yantra. And my question is simple. Each of them, of Shivendulari, Yogananda, and some other who I know. It's Mukiraj from Calcutta. We just had a speaking with him, and all they say the Kriya Yoga came from Lai Masaya. Lai Masaya became it from Babaji, but each technique is different. Each practice is different, and I find it's really important to have value that has great value, and I have always done my practice honestly and follow each steps. And my question is, why they change, or it's so different? It's for adapt it to the students, for his capacities, or it's a kind of mind who happen? I don't know. And the second question is we became also higher Kriya, what is called higher Kriya. Is that important for expansion, or just surrender and do it? Thank you.
Okay. Now for your first question, you said the Kriya has come from Lahiri Mahashaya. That's what they said, yes. And that Babaji, somebody called Babaji or something called Babaji, has given it to Lahiri Mahashaya. This is the usual. The fact is that this person who was not Babaji but Lahiri Mahashaya was taught 108 Kriyas, of which half a dozen are known to us, generally. So that doesn't mean that you should know all these 108 Kriyas to move. What is required for a particular generation, average, is given. Now, among the average, there may be a couple of individuals who are different. Now, for them, it may be necessary to add something, not for everybody. Okay? So, when you say they are different, it means out of these half a dozen Kriyas which are available, which people came to know only through Lahiri Mahashaya and his disciples. I didn't get it from this parampara, I got it from Maheshwarnath Babaji, who was a disciple of Babaji. If you look at it carefully, the central Kriya technique is very similar. There may be some changes here and there. So if you stick to the central Kriya technique, that's more than enough. Doesn't matter about the changes. Because these changes are because a certain teacher teaches in a certain way to a certain student. So it may be a little different. But the central Kriya, which is cleaning of the Sushumna using this breath and Bindu, is common. There is no change out there. If this is not there, then it is not Kriya. Okay? Now, about the higher practices. When you say higher practices, it simply means that if you are not moving forward in the speed that you expect, we may add something so that it can be increased. I mean, this is the meaning of higher, because the central Kriya practice is the most important practice in Kriya. There is no need to add. Now, since you mentioned Lahiri Mahashaya, I must tell you this story from his life. This Lahiri Mahashaya, for those who don't know, Lahiri Mahashaya was not a monk, he was a married man with 3 children actually, and he lived in Banaras, and he is supposed to have got the Kriya from his guru, who is Babaji. Lahiri Mahashaya lived all his life after retirement in Banaras, in a small house. And he taught Kriya to so many people. He was the first person who actually was allowed to spread it. So he taught it to different people. And the autobiography of Yogi, Yogananda Paramahamsa, and several others have got their Kriya Yoga through Lahiri Mahashaya. In the sense that some of the disciples of Lahiri Mahashaya were the teachers of Yogananda Paramahamsa. So the lineage has come from them. Lahiri Mahashaya also had other disciples who are not included in this Yogoda Satsang YSS society, because he had several disciples. In fact, his closest disciple was Panchanan Bhattacharya, who used to live in Devghar in a state called Jharkhand now. Those days it was Bihar. He also had several disciples who he taught Kriya, and you may find small differences in what is taught from the original one. Original meaning what you think is original. So there may be some differences. Now what I am trying to say is Lahiri Mahashaya had many disciples. Out of that, there was one guy who was a postman. You know, does the postal services work nowadays? Postman. You know, postmen bring the letter to every house and give it to them and so on. His name was Brinda. And there was a professor, very learned professor. All the Indian philosophy, he had learned everything. Who was also a disciple of Lahiri Mahashaya. Now Lahiri Mahashaya gave a particular Kriya technique, some technique which, primary technique, to both of them at the same time. Okay? Both of them at the same time. Yeah, I'm saying this in reference to, you said new techniques are required, or, you know. And the professor came one day and said, just about 2 months after he learnt, he came to Lahiri Mahashaya and said, Sir, when will you give me the next Kriya? I have been practicing this quite well. When will you give me the next Kriya? He didn't say anything. He didn't reply. He just kept quiet. The postman came, Brinda, who also got Kriya at the same time. So Lahiri Mahashaya called him. He said, hey Brinda, come here. He said, shall I give you the next Kriya? He said, no. Please, I can't handle this. The one Kriya I've given is so intoxicating. I'm finding it difficult to deliver the letters. And my neighbors think I've become an alcoholic because after Kriya I taught her. It's such a blissful feeling on my spine that I don't know what, I can't deliver letters. I'm thinking of resigning my job. If you give me the second technique, I don't know what's going to happen. So Lahiri Mahashaya turned to the professor and said, you heard him? So when you reach there, I will give you. So what I'm saying is, also progress depends on many factors. Many factors. It's not one factor. So you can't expect, and everybody has a certain pace, P-A-C-E, pace. Everybody doesn't have the same pace. Some may go fast, some may go slow. The thing is to persist and to practice. The key word in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the textbook on yoga, which he himself called Kriya Yoga, is Nairantarya Abhyasena. That means regular and persistent practice. What happens is we get diverted. And then we practice for 1 month. Then we say, it's not working, so let me try the other. So, thank you. So, we'll meet again in the afternoon. It's exactly 12 o'clock because of your question.